Welcome back, my name is LastKnownMeal and welcome to the 22nd episode of the Cyberpunk 2077 Community Podcast. Today with me I have the usual bunch, starting from MadQueen, welcome.
Greetings, Earthlings.
Triple S League.
Hello, how is everybody doing? I'm Subsidian.
And the Neon Arcade.
What's up, everybody?
And today we have a very special guest, a lead quest designer from CD Projekt Red currently working on Cyberpunk 2077, Pawel Sasko. Welcome.
Hello, everybody. It's a wonderful feeling to be here with you.
Same with us. And we do apologize for the technical issues. That was on my end. Please do not blame MadQueen. This was on me.
Yeah, this time it wasn't me.
So today we have a lot of...
My Windows was just updating before the stream, so yeah.
every time there is something important like a podcast or anything like Windows, like I want to update, please. So yeah, today we have a lot of things to talk about. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat below. But I'm certain that the squad here has also a lot of questions for Pawel.
We're going to have a lot of questions, but I have the first. And I this question is because I am not really sure sometimes if I'm saying things that are not there, or I'm saying an insane attention to detail. So I have a very, very, very stupid question that I had a great curiosity since the first time that I watched the trailer. Does the noodle guy wear BioWare?
I'm sorry, what?
See? I know this was going to be the question.
Oh, that was the question about BioWare. Yes, okay, now I got it. But what was the first bit of the sentence?
Sorry, on the internet, we call Dexter's bodyguard the noodle guy.
Yeah.
It's a name that we put to him. Why? Oh yes, for the first trailer, because he was eating noodles in the first trailer.
That's correct. That was him.
Does he wear BioWare in his arms? Does he wear a muscle weave?
No, he actually does not wear the BioWare in the understanding or in the meaning of Cyberpunk 2020. He is wearing a cyberware, and those are gorilla arms, actually, what he is wearing.
So gorilla are cyber limbs. It's not BioWare. It's cyberware. Is there BioWare in the game?
I cannot talk about it.
Shut down already. Second question.
I was thinking, like, how many questions before you say I cannot answer that.
If I got the first question, it was going to be the first question. Okay, go ahead. I'm going to shut up for a while.
I do actually have a question for you, Pawel. It's more of a question about your work there. How did you get into the position to be a lead quest designer? Like what was the motivation behind it, and how do you usually approach that work? Because that is something that is really interesting to hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I will try to answer this question not in like 2 hours long or something. So the story is actually pretty standard, I would say, but it has twists and turns. So I was born in Polish mountains. I'm actually 34. So for people who like saw me, they were like shocked that I'm 34, I guess. But yeah, I'm in the industry 15 years. Right now, I started when I was 19. And when I was like 14 years old, something like that, I actually didn't have a computer. One of the things that I was doing, I was taking care of the cows, and I was taking them for the pasturing in Polish mountains. And we had this epic magazine called Secret Service. So I was always taking Secret Service with me in like a bag and like reading it with one of my cows. At the beginning, it was 2 cows. Later, it was 1 cow. We were reading together. They were always like sneaking and circulating me around. One, which was Kalina, she always loved to lick me on the neck, which I tried to teach her not to.
Maybe we're entering here into too much detail.
Okay. But it was like it was a key detail. It was a key. Anyway.
We need to know about his cows. Come on.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. There are quests in the game. Yeah. Anyway, so let's move on. So, but basically, I didn't even have a computer, and one of the things I was doing, I was reading about games, and I was imagining, how it is to play the games and so on. I actually didn't know how it is. I saw it. I saw like a really old Aladdin game from like 1980 something on computer from my friend. That was the only computer game I ever saw, and the last one was just my imagination. So I didn't know how the computer games work really at that time when I was 14. And and then there was this moment I was like reading articles in Secret Service, and I found out when I was like I think 17 that there's this company called CD Projekt Red, and they are making the game based on the Witcher saga. And I was actually a fan. I was actually like reading the books. I knew a lot of them. And thing is that this is somehow like sparked my interest, to start looking into it. And then I figured, okay, there are like computer games that have stories, and then you can, like be almost like a writer for them. And this like started to spiral whole my interest in that. I started, reading all the things that I could about it. When I got my first computer when I was like 17, I think, or 18, learning everything about it. And when I was 19, I finished high school and then went to Warsaw to study journalism and psychology. I did 2 different masters, and in the same time I was working. So I was I was crazy from the beginning, I would say, and I really wanted to do it. I really wanted to work on the games. Smaller companies. At first, I was just a guy in the internet who was like with few other creators. We were like working on some small game. They were called indies. Like 10 years later, we started calling them indies. But at that time, it was not like that. And at that point, I started like working on first like small mobile games and started learning, how to actually do that. What it's connected to it. At first, those games were actually not mobile. It was called, those games were called hidden object puzzle adventure games. Then there was the first RPG that was never released that they've been working on. And then there was Metropolis Software. That was a company that I joined like 12 years ago, I think. And then I went to Reality Pump, where we made Two Worlds 2 and Two Worlds 2 Pirates of the Flying Fortress. Those are 2 big open world RPGs that I've been working on. And in my last year of working there, I've been there like 3 years. I became a lead of the team. And at that time, CD Projekt was working on The Witcher 2. And after we released the second expansion, I reached out to them thinking like, okay, maybe I will manage to join them. I already tried multiple times, and they every time told me like, get the fuck out. You have like 0 skills, So, but I knew, okay, I just need to be persistent. I need to learn. I had this goal. I really wanted to join them. It was like something that like sparked in my my roadmap, my imagination, that I really wanted to be with them, because I was a believer in their mission, and it was something very seductive, I would say, in the way they were maintaining themselves as a company, the way they were building the games, the way they were talking about the games. It was something very magical for me. And it was very different, from other companies. And that's why I really wanted to join. And eventually there was this interview that I had with Adam Badowski. I remember I came to the interview. Interview was supposed to be like 30 minutes. And we sat down with Adam for like 3.5 hours, just discussing things. Like it was already over hours. Like we finished at like 10 in the evening or something, my interview, because we were just sitting together and discussing things. And I think he liked me. This is how the whole thing started. But yeah, there was like a lot of crazy stories, connected to my whole recruitment. But maybe I don't want to bore you guys with that. And then, when I joined with Witcher 2, we finished Witcher 2, we finished Enhanced Edition. I was a specialist at the time. Then I became a senior on the Witcher 3 because I was just putting all my heart into this work. I worked in plenty of main quests and side quests in The Witcher 3. The ones that I like the most, I would say, or put the most work in. This is a Bloody Baron storyline, so like Family Matters and few other quests that follow that. Then there was, for instance, Romance with Yennefer, which was The Last Wish. I did also Battle of Kermoren. And then, there was I think 12 quests altogether, like a big main quest that I've been working for The Witcher 3. And then for expansions, I became a lead of the team. And I've been leading the team since that time. I worked on the wedding quest for the first expansion for Hearts of Stone. And in the second expansion, I did La Cage aux Fous, which is the quest about the Spoon Collector in the second Witcher. And after that, I transitioned to Cyberpunk. And that has been going for some time.
Nice.
Wow.
That is quite
You
a
worked
story.
on the best quests.
I was lucky enough to make some decent things, yes.
Yeah. Those
Don't
are
be modest.
those are the quests we actually remember.
Yeah, those are all great.
Yeah.
Is there something on par with maybe the Bloody Baron in terms of like emotional impact in 2077? Do you have a personal favorite that you've maybe worked on already in the game?
So, it's not the quest that I've been working on. It's one of the very talented designers in my team that's working on it. And that's as much as I will say about it because I don't want to spoil anything.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, one of the things that we learned, like when we were working on the quest for The Witcher, and I think we are doing it better in Cyberpunk, but you guys will judge, which was that we learned very fast or early in The Witcher 3 that those quests that are considered the best, they are connected to emotions for the player. And those quests don't have to be like dramas. It does not have to be about killing, raping, and all that. It could be also funny and cheerful, like let's say the wedding was. It's extremely trivial what I will say right now, but it's when our viewers, our players, when they tie emotional value, when they add emotional value to anything, they remember it better, right? This is extremely obvious. But I don't think it's that obvious for game creators. I think that the movie industry figured it out ages ago, and we are just catching up because there's not that many games that we've been doing this. I think since The Witcher 3, and I'm not saying that Witcher 3 made other developers do it, but I think that we are maturing as an industry well enough to be also talking about more important topics, I would say. Because really, for me, games are art. They can be art. They definitely proven that they can be art, and same as movies or any other really industry. And that's why I think we learned very early that tying emotional value with any story that we tell is important, and players will like it, and then they will enjoy it more, and they will understand it more, and so on. And I feel that Cyberpunk is packed with it. There are things that stroke a chord with different people from The Witcher 3. So I love it. There was recently on one of the groups from The Witcher. It's called the Witcher Lair, the one on Facebook that I'm always lurking in, and I'm always spying on people there. But there are very often the threads when the guys there and guys and girls when they talk about what are the best quests in the game, and pretty much all those threads, they go completely differently. People point out, of course, often similar quests are mentioned, but very often those are things that nobody ever mentioned before. There was some quest that somebody loved. I remember from The Witcher 3, there was one quest that not that many people found. That was done by very talented senior in our team who's now working on Cyberpunk, and he did a quest where player finds out the cheese dungeon.
Oh.
So there was a mage who was doing transmutations of cheese, and you can get a sword at the end that is called a Mentalair. And basically this whole quest is a big joke that he did. And one of the people mentioned that quest. This is so hidden, it's so hidden that it's almost impossible to find. in the game. And that's the thing. It's like this one is a funny one. I don't know. Maybe the person who loved it just likes Emmentaler and loves cheese.
Who
But the
doesn't?
thing is, like, in some way, yeah, in some way, that particular quest has spoken to that person like in a stronger way than others. And this is what I really like, so that we can talk, like, make a game that is like varied enough and tells a story that is like so rich and so vast and strikes like different emotions that a lot of different people can find something in them. And we tried to do that in The Witcher, and I think we're doing it way better in Cyberpunk. But we will see.
Well, this that you are explaining makes me think of a question about transmit emotions in the game, because in the world of Cyberpunk, that is one thing that is a very like it's the core of the universe, which is the sense of paranoia. You had the stories, you had different things that as a game director you could play with to make your players be paranoid about things. And when we saw the trailer, we saw a little bit of this feeling of paranoia in the fact that you don't know if you're going to be betrayed or you're not going to be betrayed, because in the body language of the fixer you could show that something was about to happen. But this is a core aspect of the Cyberpunk universe. I mean, did you think about that when transmitting the emotions of the universe, the sense of paranoia?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. It's a really cool question, actually. And I think it ties up with the noir in general, with the noir as a genre. And Cyberpunk is like one of the, I would say, children of noir. And one of the elements of it is a paranoia, as you mentioned, and it's important for Cyberpunk. And in The Witcher, we did build and use that kind of element and played with it a bit. But I think that Witcher was a bit more, I would say, cheerful in places, and in especially the feeling of being betrayed and the feeling of being unsure, who do you trust in Cyberpunk is very important for us. Don't want to spoil much, but the showing of the Gamescom demo that is coming will contain like some of it. So I think you will be able to like feel a bit of that and see it on the screen, like what exactly we mean by that. And you can build it, by the way the characters are acting, by the music. You can build it by the certain choice of colors. This is extremely basic what I'm saying, but I don't feel that many games do that. Like I think that we are as an industry way too immature to look at things like this. And here in CD Projekt, we really try to look at it like in a very to treat the medium as to treat games as a matured medium, and use all those tricks, I would say, to like create the feeling of paranoia. Exactly, that's one of them. But I think that Cyberpunk is way more. I think it's way richer than only that. That's the same for that was the same for The Witcher, right? People felt that it's dark fantasy and that's what the game's gonna be, and that's like the primary feeling. And I think the paranoia is gonna be probably one of them in Cyberpunk, but there's way more. There's this very old, like I would say, rule in storytelling, which is that too much of the same is not good. Or that was not perfect English, but my point is, like, if you eat ice cream every day, you will vomit. To put it in other words. So if you want to keep the player paranoid, you need to deceive him. To make it that from time to time there is a person that you can trust, there's a person that you can love, there's the person that is actually faithful. And because of that creates like such a natural, I would say, mix that gets into your head, and you start doubting yourself, and you start thinking, like, what the fuck's going on? Like, should I trust or should I not trust? And yeah, I think that's the beauty of it.
So let me ask one here. One of my favorite things in most games is when you have interesting characters and interesting little bits of things here and there. Now we've seen the spider bot. Is there any weapons that have either an AI or personality core in them that's a little bit snarky or sassy? that likes to talk, or at least list off the kills that you're doing?
That's the wonderful question, and but I can't answer it.
Okay.
Okay, who's going to count them?
But I really question in the line of thought, I would say.
So then let me do a follow-up one. Are there any missions that we could possibly complete if we focused on, instead of bringing more ammo to the fight, just a big old keg of alcohol or or money or
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, good. So we've got really
absolutely.
interesting ways that we can finish some of these quests then.
I mean, you can look at what we did in The Witcher and like think about more ridiculous way, and that's that's Cyberpunk. Like, it's just like if this is what we've been doing in the past, so here we just push it a bit further. Like, of course, it's not in a way, because that would be like would have been unmanageable on the production side, to cover all those possible options and so on. But we really like do our best to cover all the things, and also like one of the beautiful things in The Witcher was that some solutions, like some things that you could do, were very like there was an obvious way to do things. There was less obvious ways to do things, and there were like some ways that were super hidden that players like found years after. And yeah, you can apply it to Cyberpunk. That's pretty much the way. Example, I think you mentioned that you picked the bagel and you fixed the quest with it. I'm not sure if I heard it correctly, but yeah, I mean, that's the interesting way.
Well, in fact, we also had a discussion some time ago about using the relationships with other characters to be able to complete quests. Well, that's the blowjob joke, but being
Yeah.
softer relationships of characters. So it's because usually when you can romance characters, this is something that is apart from the quest. It's not something that it's going to make you advance in the story. It's something that is apart. I mean, it's integrated into the story in Cyberpunk, or it's just something that you can do apart from quests.
Yeah, so I think thinking about the relationships with the characters, you can like think about Witcher 3, and I know that I'm saying it all the time, but it is sort of true. So in The Witcher, we learned that one of the best structures for open world that we can do is make like a very strong, I would say, spine for the story that is leading the players, and in that spine introduce different traits, different tropes from the I would say that given type of the game, so let's say from Cyberpunk or from dark fantasy, like introduce those elements slowly in the main story, and then also introduce the characters. And then when you have this very strong root, very strong spine, then you build like leaves, around it. And I would say that this is the way how the Cyberpunk story is. So as you develop your main storyline and you move further, there will be like hints, and the game will like show you things that you can do and you can move forward, but you won't, I think, ever know if we are tying up back to the main story with it, or are you already on a side branch and just developing your relationship with the character. The game at some points, depending of course what kind of character you are building and what kind of progression you are going with, the game will telegraph it in some ways. Because there are some important decisions, I would say, like basically, like the simple example is, do I want to be in a quote unquote relationship with that given person? So of course we will telegraph that in some way, but we are trying to keep it like as close to life as possible. And as we know, like things like that can be pretty vague, right? Between people. So we just want to like strike that, I would say, balance, or to just keep it real, and going to meet, and the relationships that you're going to develop, they are going to be useful, and sometimes very useful, and sometimes useful in a very surprising ways, I would say, for the main storyline.
Okay.
And useful for the enemy or for the player?
Useful for what?
I'm wondering, for the enemy or for the player?
Oh, I mean, different ways. Very.
We do have a question from Marian Boltevsky. It's actually a really good one. How are unkillable essential NPCs handled? Will there be a logical context for invulnerability? I cannot pronounce this.
And vulnerability.
Yeah, that.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the troubled word. That's a wonderful question. So I will answer it the same annoying way as always do. So in The Witcher 3, we are handling in a fairly similar way. So there's always I would say a strong story context to it. So that character is tied up with your plotline and is needed. And I would say on a declarative level, you as and this character is useful for you, or you are helping him or her, or you have common goal. And because of that, as you declare that, you become like sort of they become immune to you, sort of. This is the way how we do it. So we basically follow up the player, checking basically what is your, I would say, relation with that character. How are you positioning yourself against them? And depending on that, you can kill them or not and develop that further. And of course, that means that the most important characters are unkillable, the same as in The Witcher. But for instance, there were characters, I would give an example, for instance, of Keira Metz, right? She was unkillable for most of the game, but there was a strong story moment when the players could kill her, right? So that is exactly that is very, very close to how we are handling it here.
Well, as you mentioned The Witcher constantly, there is something that The Witcher had, excuse me, that we're wondering if we're going to see in Cyberpunk 2077, which is crafting mechanics. You only talked about so far about the crafting mechanics regarding weapons, but obviously we're going to be able to be a techie, which sounds like a person that would have other abilities apart from repairing weapons. What can you say about crafting mechanics that are not applied to guns?
Okay, so it's a really cool question. Actually, techie class for us, I would say, or techie build rather than class, because we don't really have classes. Techie build is a build that is utilizing the Flathead, and Flathead is the spider bot that we have shown in the first demo. It's the one that we bought from Royce, right, in the All Foods Factory, meeting Maelstrom, that you guys hopefully remember. So the techie class is the one that is able to command Flathead around and ask him to perform various actions for the player. And I'm talking about the Flathead because Flathead is actually the one that is performing those actions for the player. And Flathead can perform takedowns for the player, can like take over some devices for the player. It can also dismantle objects and collect parts for the player.
Ooh.
And now those elements are actually used for the crafting. And as I mentioned, like the classes are not the classes are fluid. So as a player, you are not tied up to like you don't really have to be specialized techie to be able to use crafting. I just wanted to point it out. So basically, if you're a solo or if you are a netrunner, you can still use crafting. It's not like that it's blocked for you. Just basically the way you obtain parts, it's done in a different way. But then as a player, as you obtain those parts using, let's say, techie build, in that case, you are able to use them to upgrade your weapons, upgrade your gear in general, speaking broadly. And gear, in this case, I mean, mentioning gear here, I mean specifically pretty much most of the elements of equipment. I'm not sure if I can say that it's all the elements. I don't think those are all the elements you collect, but most of the things that you collect in the game that you use as a gear, you can craft or upgrade, because that's also the important part, because for us it's tied together. So it's not only that you create new things, but you can update things that you have already found in some way. So you can like boost its stats or change its appearance to, you know, like turn it more towards your likeness, I would say, or the way you like it.
And you can upgrade Flathead.
I don't want to disclose it yet, but you can do various things with Flathead. Yes, that's correct.
Can you control the Flathead yourself, or is it kind of like an AI kind of companion?
You are actually controlling him in a way that you're issuing commands for him.
Okay.
So he is AI controlled, but
Mm-hmm.
at moments when you want him to do stuff, you just tell him.
Okay.
So you basically issue a command and you go like flathead fetch, and he goes, runs, and kills the animal guy.
Ah.
Do we also
So
have
we
those
have- we
commands for
have-
other companions? Like human companions? Do we get commands for them, or are they kind of just they do their own thing?
They mostly do their own thing, and this is because they are like this is for us an important bit of building their personalities. So
Sure.
they're acting differently. They have slightly different, like I would say, AI archetypes. So the way they are fighting our companions, they are fighting slightly different ways depending, what those companions are. So because it's actually a lot of them, they have different abilities. So they are doing different things, and that is always tied up to their, I would say, personalities, like the persons they are, their history.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, in the story element, in the story moments, there are moments when you are deciding together, okay, how we are approaching it. Like, situation looks this and that, let's do this. And then you can discuss it together and be like, okay, that's the correct way to go. So there are elements like that. So in that form, you can say yes, that you can issue the commands, but it's more, like story based.
Sure.
While with Flathead, he is just an AI, right? So you just point him out like, okay, Flathead, go there, take this guy, connect me to this access point, and so on. So that's the way how you that's the distinction, I would say.
Okay.
Well, now that we're talking about crafting mechanics, we're talking about crafting mechanics inside the techie build. But how about, for instance, then running build? Can we be able to craft our own programs? We go for the third. We go for the third.
Yeah, you're the master in hitting those troublesome questions, MadQueen. I mean, like not to disclose it yet, okay? So as a netrunner, you have access to various types of programs that you can use. There are like, I know that journalists and YouTubers, influencers were talking about various programs for this year's demo, and I think you guys will be able to, you guys being like, gamers, players in general, will be able to like see it in action, various programs that you can use. But that's as much as I would like to say now.
Okay. So then let's change the let's just quickly touch on two more. I got two quick questions to from the community about quests. One from a Goriza fan. I don't know what that is. Some kind of a fan of
Gorillas?
something called- I
think you just
don't
spelled it
think
wrong.
Well, maybe. All right. So when pursuing quests, will we have a, there's one type of game where it's like, oh, all your options are right there, and you just kind of like fast press whatever. Sometimes they're even in the same like order all the time, and so your snarky one's always like bottom left or something like that. And when passing a skill check, do you have to like, is it just reliant on that, or is it more actual like conversation trees where it's like you kind of have to guide the conversation and notice on things and pick up on things and kind of follow a more branching pathway for conversation, like they did in Deus Ex Human Revolution is a good example. But if you go back to like a lot of the older RPGs, there's a ton of really old RPGs where you had to bring up a particular subject or catch a particular thing in order to like really get a hidden, not a hidden, but not the obvious answer to something very quickly. It's like, is the conversation more like, the auto path quick fire things where people can do it with barely paying attention, hit and skip every 2 seconds, or is it going to be something more akin to like something with meaningful complexity?
I think the best answer here would be that it varies depending on the context a lot. Dialogues, when you have a scene or like dialogue basically with a character that is I would say less important character, I would say vendor, for instance, there's not much complexity going on there, like you're talking about wares, hey, could you please tell me about this yellow cyberware that you have here? That's a fairly interesting, mantis blade. So it's not really like this, because in some places it does not really make that much sense, or like does not offer really that much, I would say, excitement. But of course, in cases when it matters, it is exactly as you described. So you have to actually go through multiple, as we call them, choice sections, when you like pick and decide, okay, how I want to do this, or bring some subject and go into some sub choices, and then as a player, you are able to use the skill check or not, and so on. So it really depends on the context, to be honest. Like, as a designers, we are always trying to make sure that if you are role-playing as a given life path, let's say, or as a given build, so you're, let's say, a Netrunner who was a Nomad, that we are trying to provide you options, especially in places that feel that you should have this option. And that was always one of the guidelines we had in The Witcher, which was like, if player feels that should be able to do something, they should be able to. So basically, like, if it feels, okay, yeah, I'm talking to the fellow nomad and I'm a nomad, and we're talking about something that nomads should know about, that I can expect that as a nomad, I will have some special ways, to talk to this person and maybe figure things out in a different way. So we are trying to always approach it like that. So to keep it like in the story, in the context, to keep the player, immersed. I think that's the best way to put it.
Great. Ichisake has also asked, they love RPGs with serial killers and detective stuff. Do we have anything that's in Cyberpunk 2077 that's going to fall more into the kind of the idea of like a mission where it's like it's mostly like trying to figure something out or trying to follow the path of somebody? So it's not a very combat heavy mission, but it's more of the kind of, he brings up the cardinal sins in The Witcher 3, which was amazing. Do we have anything that's a little bit more slower paced, interesting, and more like noir kind of feeling?
Oh, yeah, I mean, absolutely. Because one of the important elements of Cyberpunk is noir. And, noir at the very beginning of its existence has been associated with detective stories, right? Like, I love just Raymond Chandler and his books. And that was one of the like key elements. His stories were based on that, right? That there was always an investigation going on. And we have been like training as a studio how to do investigation stories well throughout the whole Witcher 3. And thing is that like that whole experience is still in the studio, right? Like those are still the same people that are making Cyberpunk that did The Witcher. So especially Nick West team, because we're the guys that, and girls, because we have a lot of females in our team, we have designed those things together. And we had a lot of investigation stories. Geralt had the Witcher senses. Now in Cyberpunk, V has the Kiroshi optics, right? The eyes that allow that they have different features tied to them. One of the features is the scanner, and the scanner, one thing is it allows you to zoom in to different elements, but another thing is it allows you to uncover some things that are not obvious for a naked eye, I would say. And this is a core element of our, I would say, investigation loop. And there are stories in the game that are based around that, exactly, that player is figuring out, okay, what happened and so on. And to be honest, as a studio, I think throughout the Witcher 3 production, we just started to just love. Like we started to really love the investigation stories in general. And like, because it's just the feeling of mystery and figuring things out and so on. It's really cool. And in the demo that you're going to see soon, there are also elements that we touch upon, and we showed that there are things that you can figure things out. There are hints left on the way. So you can find out about things earlier and then have an advantage about it. And there are also like quests that are purely based on investigations. And of course, I don't want to disclose more because I don't want to spoil anything for people. But
aren't you afraid that the players may not get what do they have to do and get frustrated?
Yeah, that's a really cool question. I mean, this is that was a fun one thing that I think Neon just touched upon just a moment ago when he asked me the question of the like one choice in the dialogues that allows you to go through really fast and like clear. And this is a balance that we're always like struggling with, I would say, as a designers. This is a challenge for us to keep the story interesting enough, not to make it obvious, but in the same time make it clear and understandable for players that have different backgrounds. Because the players who will play Cyberpunk, those are people who just had 1,000 hours in Witcher 3, and those are players who just basically play mostly Call of Duty and maybe PUBG and so on, games like that. And we need to look at the players that have different expectations. And one of the things that we are doing always is making sure that I would say the core of the quest is like understandable enough for people who look for a lot of depth, and who look for the people who want to go through the story fast, and it has a lot of depth for people who like dive into the story a lot. And I think Carnal Sense is a great example from Witcher 3, because that was the quest where you had actually a really painful consequences if you didn't. I think this is one of the reasons why players love that kind of stuff. So that's the challenge. That's this fine line that we are trying to walk. And believe me, like that's not easy to do. We are failing miserably all the time.
But is this tied to the difficulty of the game, or regardless of the difficulty of the game, the difficulty of the quest is going to be the same?
That's regardless of the difficulty, because it's very, very keen and connected to, like, I would say, intellectual capabilities of the player. And it's connected also to sometimes to simply knowledge of the player or his, concentration skills and so on. I mean, there are like our players are so varied that it's impossible to say if the story is like very complex, if they will be able simply to get it, and we just need to make sure that I would say entertainment that we provide is great for everybody, but then the people who look for depth, who look for interesting things, who look for twists, that they also have it there, right? And it's this fine line that is always difficult to walk.
Before we continue, just before we continue, I wanted to say thanks to Lit for a €10 donation, and thank you. It's good to have you here. Sorry.
Perfect.
A
quick follow up to the question, because this is something that it's kind of a small thing, but for a lot of us who are really fans of the genre, we really enjoy this. And that is so the noir kind of feel that we get from it. What other kind of noir things do you guys have in the game? And do you have my favorite, which is so very rare these days, where it's like a little bit of self-narration, or like you kind of get that feeling of like self-narration? And I was thinking it's a noir film thing. So it's like when somebody walks in, when you're watching a movie with it, typically how it plays out is like they walk in, they start doing the scene, but then at some point they turn and they look at the camera and they kind of break the fourth wall and they kind of talk to the camera. I was like, what would be cool is if there was a crazy person, like a serial killer, that hopped on like a PA system and started narrating V while V was trying to solve the crime. It's like, and then the mercenary walked into the bathroom and they looked around and clearly there wasn't anything there, or was there? And then, of course, that's
this is material for a mod.
Yeah. So, but I mean, other than that kind of joking kind of idea, what were some of the concepts and some of the favorite stuff that you guys used to help kind of build the noir feel? Because again, this is something that's pretty rare it's not very common in entertainment, even though it's a really good and focal kind of point of really good narratives that have helped build the entertainment that we have today. Because these were really popular back in the 30s and 40s, and we get very, very few of them today.
Well, yeah, I believe that mostly because entertainment went to a point where everything needs to be super clear and super easy and so easy to digest. They give it that the viewer doesn't have to think.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really cool and really complex topic, I think, because one thing is like if I will start giving examples, I would have to give away basically what we are precisely using, and this is a spoiler.
Yes.
I cannot do it. So trying not to do that. I mean, one thing that I can say is like we are fans of a noir a lot, and I think we have investigated the genre a lot, and I think like we are believers, and I hear mean like myself and like people who are leading the quest team, the story team, the open world team. So people who are building narration in our games. We are believers of making sure that all the components that we are taking from noir, those are used well. But it does not mean, because sometimes people ask me, because it's a connected topic of a cliche, right? Like people have a trouble sometimes distinguishing between cliche and trope. And we are really fans of using a trope well. And let's say and the tropes are like typical elements of noir. And I would say the typical element of noir, and that won't be surprising, I think if I would say, is there are things, for instance, oh god, I just lost word literally right now. Sorry. It's a part when a mysterious figure appears, and that mysterious figure has a task for a main character. And that's the way how a lot of books from Raymond Chandler starts. And that mysterious figure is very often a female, and that female very often will betray the main character. And this is like, I would say, a trope that has been reoccurring in noir throughout like last 6 years or something. And this is a way how, like, we are believers of using a trope, but using it well. So it does not mean that we won't ever use it. It will mean that we'll look for a twist, that we'll look for something to like put the player on the field that player feels that he or she knows. And then when they will feel like, I would say, comfortable, then we'll twist it in a way they would not expect, to surprise them. And that's the way how we always like take the tropes from noir and try to use them in, I would say, intelligent way. And I think this is as general as I can get, as I can go, without spoiling little or main story or side quest. So I shouldn't do it.
Okay. We have a couple of more questions from the community. This one is actually from my Discord, and also thank you, Ali, for putting them like this. Now the question is, how is loot affiliated to a quest? Are there certain tasks that we need to complete during a mission to unlock certain unique loot items, or is the loot granted when a quest is completed?
Oh, okay. So for us, it's almost with everything, the loot is actually connected in the game with the story. And it's always somehow in somewhat tied up to what player is experiencing at that given time. So to give you an example, like as you are going through the All Foods factory that used to be producing that in vitro meat that we have seen in the first demo, and you're going through that, and that factory is owned by Maelstromers, right? So would you connect? Oh, and one key element to that story, we know from the story that they have been stealing and robbing the convoys with military equipment, right? So that, as a designers, that gives us a lot of ammunition, how to build a cool loot around it. And I don't want to obviously spoil again what you could expect there, but you can imagine, and your imagination can show you, okay, yeah, so this is a place where they've been producing like this artificial meat, and this is a place owned by Maelstrom, and they've been stealing military equipment. So there's probably loot tied up to those three elements that come together in this quest. So this is a way how we build it. So as you're exploring that given location as a player, you will be finding out things that are connected to the story of that given location, because we want the world to speak to the player. It's not only the words, it's not only the way how the narration is done in throughout the scenes, but it's also narration through items and through things that you find. And one of the wonderful examples that I love here is Dark Souls games. They do almost the whole narration almost through items. You figure out what has happened in a given location, following up, looking at the items, of different things that have happened on that location that you're exploring at that given time, and they do their narration almost throughout that. That is, of course, a bit different in Sekiro, but
They also did that in Fallout 76, and people weren't very happy about it.
well, because they did it only through that. So I think it's a matter of how you utilize that tool, that narrative tool that you have there, and it's good that that MadQueen touched that, because another thing is, of course, the elements that we did in The Witcher, which is like the moments when simply the certain loot is given to the player, right? So you are doing something very specific to get a very specific thing. Like, for instance, that is true for the Flathead. You have a whole quest almost to go through the All Foods, to do your deal with Maelstromers, to find out, okay, and to obtain that special thing, and that happens in the game at least few times. Mm-hmm. When that special loot when that special equipment is connected to the story that they're experiencing at the given time. So I would say it's a mix, right? It's a mix of everything, of all those methods that I mentioned.
Mm-hmm. And now that you guys have that fluid class system, how much more of a time investment does it take to kind of build those quests around them, to kind of be able to manifest all those different choices? How much more of a time investment is needed to make those quests, meaningful for each of those different fluid class options?
Dear Lord, I'm losing my mind. Like, seriously, you have no idea how complex it is. Like, seriously, Geralt was a dude with a sword. That was so much simpler. That was so much simpler. No, because seriously, like right now, all those playstyle sequences, or this is how we call them, they're like just I'm wetting my bed because of it. Like, like seriously, because the thing is that you can do stuff in so many different ways. Mm-hmm. And of course, like, we don't want to limit the players, so we don't want to make the player feel that they're limited, like in artificial ways. So we are trying to stay, like, I would say, faithful to one of the key elements of Cyberpunk for us, which is the freedom. And the freedom is in the story, and the freedom is also in the gameplay. And that freedom has to be there. And you as a player, when you are just going, from point to point and, like trying to get to the specific, like I would say, location to find somebody or find information or obtain something or like perform some specific task, as it is, let's say, in this new gameplay demo. The thing is that for us, it's important to make sure that players can do that, but it's insane. Like, I think that we were fucking crazy, like, when we come up with this, and we made it even more complicated in time. Like,
that's incredible.
Game delayed.
I hope it won't be delayed. No, I'm pretty confident it won't be. But
Well, yes, Pavel. I remember an interview you did some years ago where you said very confident that yes, The Witcher will be released in 2014.
Look at me.
That was his twin brother.
I can be confident, but I can still be wrong, right?
So we will think that you may be wrong. That doesn't depend on you anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, I think we have figured it out. We have figured it out because that was one of the hardest and most complex, and I think the longest R&D periods that we had. When we've been figuring out, okay, what is the good feeling of being a netrunner, good feeling of solo, good feeling of fast solo, good feeling of techie and utilizing Flathead, to go through this quest and still feel really cool as that, let's say, a netrunner who has some of the Flathead abilities and is a nomad, let's say. And how is it, good enough and feels enough? And this is this is something that we are, always pushing, from one side to another, like trying to strike this balance to give the player enough freedom, but in the same time not to kill the game with complexity. And I think we get it, but it tends to be complex. It really is. And right now, at the stage that we are right now, we are making sure that the quests are polished. We're making sure that all paths are covered. And when our QA and they're wonderful because they can come up with such a weird shit. Like seriously. And I'm like, yeah, of course, like we didn't think about it. That's obvious, and we have to cover this. So that happens fairly often, and it's like we can like do it to best of our abilities, but there are moments when we're like, shit, I mean, we need to introduce some other way to secure that or like make sure that it works. And I think we have it covered, but I'm probably wrong. I mean, we'll see. It's like ongoing. It's very ongoing. It's very complex, I think, and it's something that is super fucking exciting in the same time because we have never did that before, and that was something that I feel was a bit of a downside of The Witcher 3. People were pointing it out to us that I would say the gameplay bits were like fairly simplistic, and even though we like worked tirelessly at that time to really make it happen, that was as much as we could do. And I think right now we're so much better in that. Like we put like a lot of effort, like we did like conscious effort. We want to upgrade that part of the game a lot to just make it feel better. And frankly, I feel we did that. My only fear is if the players will feel enough freedom. If this is to just make sure that their fantasy of being like free, of being the way they want it to be, is really satisfied. And this is something that we put a lot of effort into to just make sure it feels cool. Yeah, and that's without going into detail, that's as much as I can tell. And one thing, maybe to sum this up, is I think it was really right choice to go that path, because it just taught us so much. It just taught us so much how to do good gameplay. I just hope for it. I just hope we are there, because it feels good already, and I hope that players will appreciate it, and I hope they will like it. Basically, that's yeah.
The goal.
We will push.
It's really
like
funny
the
because in the late 90s there was this trend where pen and papers wanted to have the simplicity of video games, and now we're reaching a point where video games want to have the complexity of pen and paper games, and I find it very funny.
Okay.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Yeah.
Going back to the subject of the story, I have a very absurd question that is not going to be answered probably. But well, considering the pessimistic nature of the Cyberpunk universe, how the fuck are you going to finish the story that we don't want to throw our computer off the window?
Probably everybody will just throw it.
Holy shit, it was expensive. I'm going to hate all of you if I have to do that.
I just I think that's the plan. Like we'll just the hardware industry will just have this huge boom because
you guys are in cahoots with them, aren't you?
Before
mega corporations at their best.
Before we continue,
the question, it had a serious part, because obviously this is a very pessimistic world where you try to fight mega corporations who think that is impossible. You try to survive and do more or less the good you can, which is impossible. You try to trust people, which is impossible. So how are you going to build a story that we don't want to kill ourselves?
Well, I mean, because I don't want to I would say spoil the main thought, because I really want to answer this for the players for themselves. But this is a really cool question, and this is something we've been discussing a lot. Players feel them, and I want the players to answer it for themselves. How the game gives a lot of different answers for that, and sort of the ways how player will define the ways player will define themselves is really up to them, and that's why I feel that the freedom, which may maybe sound weird, but the freedom sounds feels like and matches in a fantastic way with Cyberpunk, because basically Cyberpunk is about not being free. And when the game is about freedom and defining yourself and finding that freedom in many different levels, and it's really up to you, how do you do it? Like, we as creators, we will leave you a lot of different options to do that, and you will have to decide like how I see myself, like what's the way I want to do it, and like, do I do it through my relationships with characters, or the way, or maybe, the ways with corporations, or the ways how I let's say, without spoiling stuff, just how I how I have lived in Night City, what is my story, who I have met, what I have said, what I have done, so sort of close to how the life is really. And I mean, I feel that in life we can be more or less free. I think we really are never really free, always oppressed in some way, just depending on the definition of the oppression we are using. And I think that players will have to answer it for themselves. The game provides like lots of different ways to answer that question. So
it's funny because I'd like to make a comment on this. This is a universe about not being free, but about being sold that you are, because this in Cyberpunk is the American dream. So it's like contradictory.
It is, and that's why it's like it's very surprising how well it fits. The fact that the game is really about like looking for the freedom in a very broad meaning, I would say. And I don't want to specify the meaning I mean, because not to spoil stuff, but that's the thing. It just ties up very nicely, and the freedom in gameplay that you have, and the freedom in quests, in choices, and your paths that you're picking, like what I do, what I say, who I am, how I look, just everything, who I love, who I make love to, what I said to the given people, what gear I use, what cyberware I use, maybe the cyberware I don't use, maybe what is my relationship with what I did with that, how did I save myself, that's the if you can actually.
We do have a question from
all this
Jose
while Johnny Silverhand says stupid things in the background. Please go on.
We do have a question from Jose Perez, and thank you for a $2 donation. Was Jackie's death just one possible quest ending?
Oh, guys, you know that I can't spoil it. You just know asking these questions that I can spoil it. I mean, as much as I appreciate the question, I really shouldn't tell you, because I will just damage your experience. So I just leave it like that. Like, we did it very intentionally. This is what I can tell you.
Okay.
Very
Jumping from that, I think I have a question which is not gonna get a no. Does weather and time of the day affect main side quests in the game? Like which day it is it night, is it morning, is it evening? Does that actually affect like some of the quests we do? And it is like, if we tackle a quest, for example, during one part of the day or during the night, is it going to be different? Like, for example, during the night, let's say one object or one building has less guards or something like that. Is that going to be implemented or?
So it actually has meaning in a few different layers. And as always, I go into my 20-minute explanation now, but basically,
please do.
Yeah. So it works in a few different layers. So I think the first one, which is the most obvious one, is a day-night cycle, and that is applied to multiple things. The encounters that player is going to experience in the game, they actually differ from the time of the day when player is going to go. Now, it is always, as for us, tied up to the story. So there are places that do not make sense if they differ depending on the different type of day, because they basically need to have guards, let's say, at the given time always. But for instance, there are scenarios that it makes sense because of the story. And those are the moments when that actually differs. And this is the second layer, so the story layer. There are moments when player is supposed to perform a specific thing, and your companions, let's say, they will be like, okay, V, but like maybe we should rethink it. Like I know for a fact that we could do it in a different way, maybe in a different time. What's your take? Like, are we going for this or for that? And as a player, you can of course do whatever you want. And we do our best to like provide that options, because players sometimes are like, yeah, of course, I want to have more challenge. I of course want to have more opponents, because that mostly means more loot. So why not? Why not try it? But it may have some consequences. So that's the thing. It is like the story layer like introduces that elements that, okay, like maybe we should wait for a different opportunity to tackle that given problem. So that is the time of day layer. Now then there is the weather. So the weather in the game is like appears in a full spectrum, I would say, and this is something that we had done fairly well, I feel, in Witcher 3, and now here in Cyberpunk it also has this, I would say, cyberpunk layer to it. Like that rainy night feels like a cyberpunk rainy night, and that's important for us. And that I would say that like shiny, sunny California day looks like a day in California, and that's those are the elements. They are basically showing all the locations, everything that player is experiencing in a different, I would say, light and different meaning. And I was mentioning that and explaining that multiple times during like Witcher 3, that we use the weather as a storytelling tool. So when we want to introduce the player in a correct mood during the quest, we will use the weather as one of the elements. So we will use the music, we'll use the weather, we will use time of the day to just make sure that when you're doing that, you feel everything, connected to that. Like, for instance, people were asking me why always when Baron is carrying Botchling to the doorstep in his manner way, why there is always raining and there is always almost a thunderstorm. Well, the reason is because I did it like that. Like I made sure that every time when you always go there, no matter what weather was before, I will always slowly transition to the fact that weather gets worse and worse and worse. And eventually at the moments that I want, there will be thunderstorms, there's going to rain, because I wanted the player to feel it. And I just, I think in one of the interviews, like somebody asked me, like this is one of the ways how we go for emotions, right? I just want to get the player and make sure that everybody will be crying. Like everybody will be...
Yes.
Does that include acid rain?
Exactly.
You're going to be crying because you're melting?
Is weather more likely in specific districts, like say Pacifica? Does it rain more there, or is it just consistent across the entire map?
Oh, this is something that we're still like tweaking, because the weather system is very tightly connected with a whole like I would say light and vision for the lightning in a whole like district in the game pretty much. And this is something that's normally like in the games being wrapped up almost till the very end. This is something that's tweaked very, very, very long, like a lot of time, because making sure that all the materials, so all the plastics, all the metals, the water, like the human eyes, the skin, they look well in different light is a fucking terrible task. You guys can't imagine how hard it is to make, like, let's say, wool look as good as plastic, as good as metal, and have that materials on the character, and in the same time make their eyes look natural and make their skin look natural. Like they look like they were like doing 12 kilometers marathon just before the scene, because they're all sweating when their materials look well. You know what I mean? Like those that kind of, or they look they're made of plastic, or it looks like their equipment is made out of like some cheap crap, why it's not. So making sure that all the materials look well is very tightly connected with the correct light. And tweaking that is something that is always just happening very closely to almost the end of the game. So the weather is very closely connected and tied up to the light, the way how the lightning looks, and we're like constantly updating it. I mean, in the last screenshots, you could see what is our vision, I would say, how it currently looks in Pacifica. And we can't promise it will be looking like that, right? Because it's work in progress, as always with us. So we will be like updating it constantly to just make sure that it looks well, it runs well, but it will be changing till the very last moment. So right now, it's very hard for me to say exactly if weather will tie up to it. It may, but it may not. So we'll see as we wrap up everything.
And that extends to the Badlands. Are there weather systems in the Nomads areas?
Oh yes, obviously. Obviously, like the Badlands area around Night City, it has its own feel, it has its own lighting, its own, like I would say, the weather setup. And you can feel something more, I would say, specific that could happen in the Badlands without spoiling anything. But that's definitely tied to that. But as I said, like we will, this is something that we're still iterating. It needs more work, definitely.
Sure.
Nice.
I have another question that is tied with. I believe that you said that it was a technical problem. No, it was tied to the story that we only had one apartment. So my question on that, it seemed in the previous idea we were able to escalate in the social ladder, which I always thought wasn't very cyberpunk. But will we be able to do so, like have some success in life, or we're going to be street rats all the game?
Okay, so it is tightly connected to the story, and it's tightly connected to the player's choices and the way, what are you going to do? The thing is that this is still a cyberpunk game, so this element that you just mentioned, being a rat, is pretty much always like apparent, visible, and you can feel it. But some form of climbing up this ladder will be visible for the players, because player will become more wealthy as they are doing, various tasks in the city, as they are doing, as they are, like, let's say, getting more and more cars and bicycles for their garage, and so on. So, and also relationships that you have, as you're developing, as you're getting, more connections, I would say, it will have some impact on you, good and bad. But this, like, I would say, cyberpunk feel of being down to the ground is always going to be visible there. But it's tightly connected to the player choices. Like I can say that there are, I would say, ways to play the game to be, if players feel like that, to be wealthy.
Oh.
Siding with my corporation, siding with my mafia, siding. Okay, that was too specific. Was a joke.
No, it's just being a pizza guy. If you guys read the Diamond Age, the book, it's being a pizza delivery guy is it's a very, very dangerous job. So
we do have one more question. Does, and if yes, how does the verticality of the map affect mission design?
Dear Lord.
That's a good one.
Dear
That's
Lord.
a good answer.
That's the introduction. Now 20 minutes explanation, please.
I thought that would be enough. Okay. As an answer.
I was joking. If that's enough, that's enough.
No, I mean, obviously, like, that's very tightly connected to actually the topic of the playstyles that we had just before, because the verticality of the world and of the quests themselves and the maps and the locations that players visiting is very tightly connected to the playstyles. Player is going to be able to do missions in different ways, and because of the fact that we have like different ways to go through the locations, that also applies the fact that you can basically just go to the different floor of the building and use that different floor to reach some place that you are trying to reach. And we are using this in multiple places. There are places when verticality does not play a major role, and there are some quests when it's actually a key element. So it's all connected to the story, basically. It all depends of what story we are telling. Like if you have some quest in, let's say, a mega building, right? Something very iconic for Cyberpunk. We know that V has her place in the mega building, as we have shown in the first demo. As if we are doing things like that, like I think that the verticality of the map there is very like apparent, it's very visible and very clear. But there are scenarios when you're going, to, let's say, some I would say, without spoiling anything, locations that are just flat because of the reasons, and verticality does not play that much overall. So it's all connected to the story, to the atmosphere, to that given element that we're talking about. Now, it of course, because of the game as a shooter, it of course, it has rather a core shooting mechanics. It of course makes quest design way more complex, because you can just go like up and down various buildings, and approach things from different sides, and we are using this in our advantage, and it's actually really cool to see, how our QA is figuring out ways, okay, how to go through that given place, in different ways, and they keep sending bugs that you can go through another way that we didn't thought about. So it's a really cool feel, because you can see that it's actually working, because it's coming together, and you can see, okay, there is more ways to go through it, and it actually works. It works better than we would like it to. So.
Can we climb buildings using the mantis blades?
Sorry, once again, can you climb the buildings?
Climb buildings using the mantis blades.
We
saw in the gameplay that you can hang on the wall using the mantis blades, but can we climb buildings?
You can hover. Sorry, you can like
climb buildings.
I hear you. We can hook to the buildings, but we do not use that to climb.
No. I was about to go. No, forget it. Gravity always kills me in games.
The skyscraper climbing mechanic is in a different castle there, Mad Queen.
Sorry?
Mario.
Excuse me, I didn't hear what you said. Can you please repeat?
I said the skyscraper building mechanic is in a different castle.
Let me kill myself the ways I want.
Quick question from Andre Velasquez. He's asking, how many playthroughs would you recommend to get the full experience of the game? So
until you die is not an appropriate
150.
If I will say it, probably you guys will say that this is the amount of endings, right? If I will say because of that, I can say. But how many? You like at least number between like 1 and infinite. At least no, at least
that's
few.
Equivalent to what until you die.
Yeah, no, I would say at least few, because you like the significant differences of the differences that are come from different builds and different life paths. So at least that. But if you combine that with different choices, then it's even more. So it's like, if you would do it in an economic way, I would say, so you try to do every playthrough with a different playstyle, with different build, different life path, and you precisely do different choices, then it will allow you to go down to few playstyles. But you would have to be very, I would say, organized, like keep the Excel sheet with all the choices and make sure that you click the same. Then I think it would allow you to make down to few. But it's hard for me to even say exactly, because there's crazy shit in this game. Like I'm not even sure. Like we are literally using in the game, we are using programs that are helping us count the amount of paths in the game to help QA pick choices. It's unmanageable to do.
Do your enemies have like a large amount of abilities that they're going to be using against you? Are they going to be using their, cybernetics and stuff like that? It's like each of them going to be kind of unique in that sense?
Definitely. So enemies are divided like the yeah. There's like I don't think I even remember the number, but there's plenty of different, like I would say, archetypes of enemies, and those enemies, they have their abilities based of the cyberware they're using, and they can do things that we can do. In most cases, they're specialized in some ways. So like there are, like, I would say, guys that utilize mantis blades, right? Or guys that utilize the close combat and Sandevistan, or guys that utilize Kerenzikov, or guys that try to hack you, or guys that
Also,
use barrier.
we have some Devistan in the game.
Oh, we do?
I don't know. You just mentioned it. No, it was a Kerenzikov.
No, but you can see it referenced. Someone's speaking about it in the background.
That doesn't mean that we can use it.
We actually have both. So we have Sandevistan and Kerenzikov. Kerenzikov, yeah.
Chan, 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 chan. Please go on. I just wanted to know that.
This is what our narrator Boris says in the first demo. If you listen to him, I think he mentions clearly Kerenzikov, as MadQueen said, and then in our new Gamescom demo, we are showing enemies using Sandevistan.
Well, there was a cyber psycho attack when there's someone on the street on the first demo that you see the police investigating a cyber psycho attack, and they're explaining, the guy is using Sandevistan with this legs is crazy.
Very well spotted.
You wouldn't believe how many times I watched it.
You guys are crazy with your knowledge. Like, I should carry sandals after you with the knowledge you have about this game. Jesus. Anyway.
Some tough questions.
Hey, we lost Pawel.
So we have a couple of keys to give away, courtesy of Talsorian. So have we come up with a surefire way that we're gonna try and give some of these keys away?
Well, first of all, there's 300 people watching and only 172 likes. Click that like button with all your might. You need to show YouTube who's the boss here. Squish it. What was the word?
Squish.
Squish or squash?
Squish.
He didn't
something in between, right? Can someone explain Pawel the joke, please?
Who remembers it? Oh.
I will as soon as the fire department stops screeching by my window here. Basically, you know how you have a crush on someone. Well, this is a little bit less than a crush. It's just called the squish, and it's mutual. It's a way of showing. Yeah, it's a mutual way of showing generalized like love and support.
Oh, okay then. So I probably can say that I have a squish on you guys, on you all.
Oh.
I actually stalk you and listen to your podcast. I was sometimes.
I think we saw you in the chat last week or the week before.
I tried not to be annoying, and I tried not to do that. But I really like some conversations. That was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And the second thing that Sebsirian was explaining is that all Talsorian games gave us 3 keys to have Cyberpunk Red Starter Kit for free, and we are deciding how are we going to give them away.
Well, you guys had an idea, right?
Yes, I believe that Neon was going to write to keep the best questions
about that. Yeah. Yeah.
I should have reminded you before, right?
I don't think that's the best way to do it, anyways. I know it was my suggestion, but
yes, it was.
We should figure something out that's better. If you guys have any suggestions, drop it in the chat on how we should give these away.
Okay, because if we don't find any suggestion, you know what's going to happen? That I'm going to start to make weird questions about the law, and who knows the answer is going to get the key.
Weird category. I was just waiting hour and a half for it.
Roulette?
This guy says he's squish and immediately says, I stalk you. I hope Pawel makes a quest for his community called Dear Lord. Oh, this reminds me of a question. Are we going? A very stupid one. Are we going to be able to name our guns? Because I want to have a gun that is called the Breath Taker.
Oh, I mean, so right now I don't know anything about it being in our plans. So let's leave it at that.
Then I'm gonna try this one. You're probably gonna give the same answer that we got last time we asked, but we want to reinforce this because there's a lot of misinformation out there, and we don't want to. We want to try and get as much of a solid track on this stuff as possible. Modding is something that you guys are open to and potentially looking forward to. Yes.
Oh yes, absolutely. Where I mean, we would really want to do it. The thing is that this is something later on our roadmap, and that's as much as I can tell you. Like, I think this game is a great, like I would say, sandbox for the players to play with. Also really, really powerful and cool, and but they are complex. Like there is some deal of work we would have to do to make it work, and that is not. It's not simple. Basically, this is what I'm saying. It's not simple, and of course games come first. So we have to focus on the game first, and then see where we are. We would like to do that, and yeah, that's still in the plan. Yeah, I'm just holding my thumbs. We can't promise anything if it won't happen, because like we simply don't know at this point.
All right. Well, that does alleviate a lot of questions that we get constantly. Is like, one way or the other. So okay.
Besides, with that question, I wanted to just do one thing. I wanted to just make a shout out to our modding community, because I fucking love what the guys were doing with Geralt. I mean, seriously, with Witcher 3, with like the naked mod is the best, of course, but the others mods for the Witcher 3, the one, the others that people built, like literally the tools that they made for themselves. Like that just shows like how talented and how amazing they are. Like I just fucking love our modders. Like in the studio, in my team, I hired few modders. Actually, half of my team is past modders, and some of them were actually pretty well-known modders. Like the guy who did, let's say, where he recreated Witcher 3 prologue in the Witcher 1 prologue in Witcher 3. Yeah, he's working. He's sitting close to me, and we got the guy because he's just. And there are others that we have people who build insane mods for this game, because they show that it matters for them, that they were dedicated enough to put the time in. They have shown like that it mattered for them, and I just love it. And normally those are people who are like willing to go, like I would say, extra mile. They do not get, I would say, distracted or demotivated on the way. And the fact that they are able to deliver such an awesome stuff, it just it like blows off my fucking head. Like seriously, some of the things that I saw is like I'm just sitting with my jaw dropping. Like seriously. So yeah, it's just the modding community is insane. Oh Jesus! Guys, that my window.
What?
And it's constantly asking me to restart itself. It was like 3 times already during this. So,
I wanted to ask a question that's been asked in the comments several times. So several users are asking me for a date. So I wanted to answer April 16th, 2020. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, that's the date.
That's the date.
I have a question. What kind of character are you going to be playing? Just out of curiosity. Do you have an idea?
Oh yeah, of course. So do you guys remember the our Valentine's Day
picture?
like art?
A Cupid, Chrome Cupid.
The little Cupid that
So
has
I'm the Cupid.
That's awesome.
I'll be basically the guy that looks the most ridiculous in all the scenes. And when when Dax and Jackie, when they talk to me all smirky, and I will be there completely pink with mohawk and half naked, just waving my slong around.
Chrome skin too? Are you gonna get the chrome skin too?
Well, if only I would be able to get it at that time in the game.
Damn.
I will do everything to be as ridiculous as I can in the game. That's my build. That's the way I'm like when I was playing. I remember Fable 3. I played a female because I mostly always play females. I don't know why I'm this kind of guy, but I played as a female and I was playing in a gown.
Mm-hmm.
So I had this ball gown with like this huge hammer, and the only thing I was doing and changing in the whole game, I was just changing colors of this gown. So when I was finding a new dye, I was changing the color of the gown. So yeah, that's my
This is
Cyberpunk
pretty
one.
normal. This is very normal behavior, Pavel. This is very, very common.
Cool. Cool. That's nice to know that I'm just a default in our community.
There is one final question.
More questions.
There is actually one final from
I have another
my,
Do
one.
we have, do
my
we have
side.
more questions from the community? Because if I go, the answer is going to
Yeah,
be,
this
well,
is-
I cannot talk about that.
I do.
Guys, my jaw literally hurts from smiling and talking.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, there is actually one last question from at least my side of the community, and I don't know how he noticed this, but this is the question. During the gameplay footages, it looks like several cars and bikes had a top speed of 88 miles per hour, kilometers per hour. Can we go faster than that, or is the speed locked for frame reasons?
Oh, that's a cool question. I mean, so different cars and different bicycles that you have in the game, they have different stats. And those stats are sort of similar to what you normally would expect from the car. So they, of course, the speed is the obvious one, but they differ in terms of how well they are attached to the street, how fast they can turn, what type of tires they have, and so on. So that's all parameterized. So different cars actually feel differently when you're driving. Like for instance, bicycle, motorcycle definitely feels different. So that's one thing. And the speed is tied up actually to the type of the car, not to the frame rate, or not to the not to the frame rate. So basically, like as you are getting better and better vehicles, you will be able to go faster. Of course, there are limitations of the tech, right? Because there's just like there is a limitation of a hard drive turning and being able to load data. So we need to make sure that it's capable to stream in, because driving through the city that is empty because it didn't load yet is not fun. so that is absolutely something that we have to prevent from happening. So if you are driving like as fast as possible with the best car, that's gonna be some limitations, especially in the weaker machines for sure. And this is something that we are definitely working on, because as you guys probably know, the optimization is something that's being done in like last year, I would say, maybe something a bit shorter when it comes to the projects that are smaller, but our project is insane. So we started a long time ago, optimization. But you have to like optimize it really well. And thing is that what the cap is gonna be exactly, it is dependent really of how well we can optimize it. So how much we can squeeze out of a different gear that players are gonna have. So that's always like that. So first is basically your speed of your vehicle, and then when it's the fastest one that you can have, then the question is really about your gear that you are playing on, what it can actually stream in well, so that we are comfortable with the game looking well all the time with you driving.
Is there?
That's the answer.
Is there a particular place that we can go in the map, say like an airport or a very, 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 very long flat road that we can test speeds and various things that aren't too overly littered with things and stuff?
I think, yeah, I can fairly confident say so. I mean, especially the roads on no Badlands are fairly, fairly empty, I would say, for that kind of purpose, because there's shit ton of decorations, of course, but for checking the speed, so for having like a fairly straight line, of going as fast as possible. Yeah, I think easily players will find spaces like that in the city as well. But city is way more cramped, and way more dense, so it will be a bit harder there, I think. But I would say most definitely. Other thing is that we are still working on the game, and pretty much daily, new things appear. So it gets more and more cramped and more detailed, especially in districts that are less advanced, I would say, than Pacifica. So it may change slightly what I'm saying, but I'm pretty sure like players will be able to find it. I mean, the traffic system and the traffic in general in the city has to have a fairly like straight, empty streets, to drive around for AI and so on to handle this. So I think the players will be able to find streets easily to test out speed and so on. Like, I think the avenue that we have shown in the first demo, when you're like shooting to the scavengers that are in that cucumber van that is in the front of you that you're shooting to, when you're like peeking out of the window, that avenue is like way like straight and long. So for instance, there, I think players will be able to test stuff, how fast I can go and so on.
Next question, because someone has to do it, which means it will be me. Brain dance. We know there's brain dance in the game because there's this ad that is everywhere about the Sasha Devon experience. So tell us a little bit about brain dance, please.
We're a mistress of spoilers. So
Oh, got a new title.
So sadly,
It's number 4 or 5.
So no, I really shouldn't tell you guys because I would have to spoil too much. I mean, that's a very important part of the lore and fairly important part of the quest and fairly important part of a main storyline even. So I would like not to say more, only because I would spoil it for you. Like, we are trying to make something interesting, and that is it.
So we're going to have lots of brain dance in game. That's the important part.
Yeah.
This is not what I said.
Oh, really? I was that that's exactly what you said.
So is there
never heard
any,
anything?
is there any particular thing that you want to throw out there? We've had a lot of questions, but is there anything in particular that you want to mention or bring up that hasn't been brought up by either us or the community yet?
Oh, I mean, Jesus, sure. I mean, if you guys want me to talk, just without question,
Go for it.
I can go.
All yours.
We're happy listening. So.
Dear Lord, I mean, I can go for hours. I mean, there's many things, to be honest. The thing is that, and I would probably like to start with saying few things to our community, like in general. If you saw the pictures from Gamescom, how many people showed up, and how many people really wanted to see the game. Just wanted to say that we are insanely thankful for this attention, and it's just like, it's fucking scary. Like, when I look at these pictures, I'm like, dear Lord, what's going on? Like why the people are there? Like, what's there?
Well,
it is scary on one side.
It comes down to
What's
the
there?
company.
You, basically.
I mean, it is us. Oh, I sort of. I mean, we are very, very thankful that people are there, that people are coming in, that people are spending time. Like, the lines on Gamescom, they had 7 hours long. That's like
Ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. Like, that's absolutely ridiculous. And I know that our team that was showing the game, was doing everything they could to make it as comfortable as they could. Like they were taking way more people in the presentations than they should. Like people were sitting fucking everywhere on the lamps. The people were sitting on the floor, like just so they can squeeze them in and show them the game. And I know that they did absolutely everything they could, but I know that some people didn't manage to get in. And I mean, one side it makes me very like happy and thankful. On second side, it makes me sad because we don't really want to disappoint anybody, right? It's like I think that I don't think we expected like interest of that level. That was just like I think we need to go with a theater for like 1,000 people next time. Only 100 is way too little to be able to handle this. That's one thing I wanted to mention. It's absolutely like, yeah, you guys can't imagine how much it matters. That me and my team, we are really like looking at the things, and we treat ourselves as artists. And like, frankly, I don't give a shit about, how much we sell, how much there is going to be that people buy of the game and so on. Like, I want to make the best possible thing. I want the people to really like wet themselves when they play the game. I want them to talk about it. I want them to fight over it. I want them to be angry at us that we killed their characters. I want them to be joyful because they managed to make love to the character they wanted. I want them to be happy. I want them to cry and just to experience, like human-like emotions, and just to be able to like see how amazing, I would say, like things in life can be, and be able to like, I would say, learn and or other perspective in the game. And we are paying to those things, like to things like gender representation, let's say, to things like cultural representation, religious representation, political representation, all those things, because they are very tightly connected to the stories that we are telling, and we care a lot. And I really want the people to feel to like see that this game is somewhat special for us. Work we're putting to make sure it's good. Yeah, I got all emotional, but yes, this is what I wanted to say, because I'm not sure if it's very like clear for people. And like one of the things is like, as I said, I will be talking for hours, so just interrupt me. But what other thing I wanted to say is like,
no, go ahead. We just listen. We love it.
No, but all the decisions that we are taking, and if there are like creative decisions, marketing decisions, I don't know, whatever type of decisions, to make sure that the game is well and our community is treated fair, and we give players what they deserve, and we give them thing of a good quality. It's like and we always try to stay honest, like to say clearly what is in the game and what's not. And sometimes it's very, very hard when things are taken out of context or misunderstood. And as much as we try to be super clear, game is such a complex beast that talking about it in a simple way is fucking impossible sometimes. Like, just to understand some concepts in it just requires so much backstory and explaining. It's just way too complex. And frankly, I'm worried that some things won't ever be really understood by everybody, by our audience, by everybody who buys the game. There are things that require a bit more, I would say, I don't know, simply about history or philosophy. And it's just more difficult to talk about it. And it's easy to misunderstand things or see them in the wrong way. That's what I wanted to say. Like, we try to be honest, try to be faithful, try to be clear with what you are doing. That is, that's the whole message.
I think that's why the community loves you guys so much. You guys are transparent and obviously passionate about creating a piece of art, like you said, instead of maybe at the end of the day selling copies, which is the goal of a business, but it's also the art element too, and giving the community what they want. So that's awesome.
Well, you also do this weird thing where you're mainly interested in making good games instead of making a really good money sink for a microtransaction too, which I know is really shocking and bizarre these days, but that's very much appreciated by pretty much everybody, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just I personally I just don't play games that have microtransactions in games that are a premium titles. So if you pay for it, I just don't play it, and I just ignore their existence because I think this is the only way for us to just battle this shit. Like I'm extremely thankful to the guys in the board that they look at it like this and they believe in it. And yeah, I mean, that's something that I was like, I think they just bought me with their vision, their passion, and I'm now referring to Adam Badowski, to our board, the guys who just bought me with their vision of the way how they want to run their business. And yeah, it's that's. I just want to be proud, of what I'm doing and what we are doing, and not be like, have to be explaining myself in front of people and trying to like dodge like questions in like sleazy way. Yeah, it's for us because thing is that game development is very like you can make crazy money on it. That's true. But you can make crazy money making good stuff. Mm-hmm. That's as well true, right? Mm-hmm. Like you don't really have to do just like one's like mediocre crap. That's one level, yeah. But you don't really have to make a good game and just stuff microtransactions and the fuck knows how it's called, surprise something into it.
Surprise mechanics.
Yeah. Like surprise mechanics, but like stuff it inside everything and just make the game just like chop limbs of it because of that. Like you really don't have to do that. Like you can make really good money on it, and it's just like beyond me sometimes. Like so because of that, I'm just I'm really believing in what we are doing and the way we are doing it, and I mean, I like the fact that some companies are sort of following us when they are saying, hey, our game won't have any microtransactions, and they're using it almost as a marketing slogan, which you probably have to do nowadays. Because sometimes I see our community, our players, our audience, when they are commenting, asking about loot boxes in Cyberpunk, if there are going to be any loot boxes, and I'm like, dear Lord, like what is going on? Why they're asking about it? Like, sometimes they're asking in a way as if they would expect them by default. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That we are living in the world when it's like default. It's just beyond me. Like I started in this industry when it was to deliver quality game because you couldn't patch it at that time when I started. You couldn't patch it easily. Like it's not that the internet connection was required for you to run the game. So you had to make a finished game before it's put out of the door. Mm-hmm. Where I started in the industry, this is the way I was taught. And that's the way, like you make the game a complete package that you're proud of, that you know that if somebody is somewhere in Antarctica playing Cyberpunk, they have no connection to internet, but they run it, it will work. And they don't need day one patch or who knows what experience, it's finished game. So this is this is the school that I came from, and I really believe it should be like that. So I like the fact that at least some companies seem to follow our example in that way. And frankly, what GOG is doing with their GOG2 Galaxy is fantastic. I'm just hoping that really like it will catch up and people will see how advantageous it is actually to have all your games in one place. But that's another thing. It's just like I would say another facet of the philosophy of CD Projekt.
Brilliant.
Yeah, truly is in this day and era where most companies don't really trust in that anymore. And it's just as I think someone from CD Projekt Red, we're not Games Factory, so you really take your time to develop a game that is not going to be played once or it's gonna be forgotten in a month, but actually something which is going to be continuously played like years after it comes out because of the passion of the fans and because how you as a company treat us, the community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love the fact.
Can you explain a small anecdote about that? Because I just remembered.
Yeah, sure, go for it. I wouldn't.
The first time that I watched the teaser of Cyberpunk, I watched the teaser of Cyberpunk. I didn't know the game was in development, and there were people in my place. So I saw Cyberpunk. I saw the trailer. I started jumping around my house. Oh, there's a game on Cyberpunk. And after doing that for like 10 minutes, my friend stopped me and asked me the question, who's developing it? Because maybe you shouldn't be happy. Then we all went to the computer to see it, and the second shouting was, the people of The Witcher, the people of The Witcher. And this is a real anecdote.
That's great. That's great. I mean, we're very, very thankful for that kind of reception. I mean, we have worked hard for it, but that's one thing. But second thing is like just having the like passion and I would say following of the people that they think it's worth to support us is amazing. Yeah, it's just like I remember like how many fans I have met personally on the E3, and been really amazing. Like people from all over the world, like seriously from places that I never thought that they would just travel to LA to E3 to just talk to us. And some people waited for hours to just get into the presentation. The same goes for Gamescom. Like that was incredible. And frankly, the cosplay contest, that was insane. Like seriously, that Mantis Blade.
When are we gonna see your cosplay, your Dum Dum cosplay? I saw that on Twitter. Come on, we're waiting for it. Bust that out real quick.
I mean, I definitely have some hidden cosplay talents. So as soon as I'm done with Cyberpunk, then maybe I should go to this realm. But I hope you guys saw that there was one couple that got engaged on one of our presentation.
Yeah, I saw that. That's incredible.
In the studio, we're all commenting that, being like, yeah, it's just, Cyberpunk just makes people love each other. And that's the way I want our game to be remembered.
No, that is.
Because I think she had the Trauma Team T-shirt and like Beep hat or something like that. Like they clearly had like our merc. They were wearing merchandise from her shop, or something very clearly connected to Cyberpunk. They were both fans of the game. And it was awesome.
That actually reminds me, I think you guys had said in August you guys were releasing the NA merch store for US and Canada. Do you know anything about that? Probably not, but
yes, sadly, I personally don't have any update about the topic. I mean,
sure.
There are more important, wiser people than me who are taking care of it. So I'm just hoping that it will be soon. I know that it's in works. And I know this is something that we really want to do. And yeah, I mean, it is, as you can probably tell, complex, just
sure.
make sure that, because we want to make sure that the players around the world that will buy our merchandise will get the same quality. So that's really the same.
That's big.
Oh, that's complicated. That gets really complicated because, yeah, it's like, because I don't know if you guys bought anything from the shop, but I bought pretty much, I think, every example of one thing from the shop. And I'm considering to get Geralt right now, the Ronin Geralt, because it's just, yeah, I just love this figure, this statue. But yeah, that's a separate story. But each of those elements, they actually really have cool quality, especially the clothing. Yeah. It's just like making sure that our US and Canada players will have access to good quality thing is important for us, So we just need to make it well, and it just takes time.
Sure, yeah, that's paramount, right? So, oh, awesome.
Oof. I guess you're tired.
I mean, guys, my jaw hurts.
So many questions.
Get this guy a break.
But yeah, it is a rare opportunity. We have someone from the development team here, so yeah. So fire away. All right.
I believe.
Yeah.
We do have one more question from Legacy Killer HD is asking about vehicles and vehicle customization and I believe this is a pretty much a yes or no question. Do we have the ability to customize vehicles, or is that still on the not talking about yet?
Yeah, it's sort of the second. We have mentioned in some of the interviews that some form of it might be in the game, but that is really it. Like that's not really a very like high primary focused feature for us. So I can't say like right away yes or no to it. Yeah, I think that's the status.
Okay.
You could. I think the best answer is we are considering it. That's the.
Yeah, actually, that is a good answer for that. But yeah, I don't know if anyone else. So we're gonna be wrapping this up soon. So if anyone has anything to say for the end, feel free to.
Are we going to wrap it up soon? Shit! Now I'm battling with my microphone because I'm having issues. I have a lot of questions.
This guy's gonna need a cyber jaw if he wants to continue his
Exactly.
jaw's hurting.
Well, no, but I'm also in the same time I'm also smiling so much, so my muscles in my face hurt me. You guys need to be way more boring. That would be the solution.
Well, I mean, so many things to discuss. It's impossible.
Well, I would like to, and apologize for the crappy quality of the audio because I'm having a problem with my usual microphone and I had to put another one. But I would like to talk about music. Plenty of times you commented about the importance of music in the game and the importance of the different characters of the different districts of the game. So in one hand, I believe that when we are driving, we can choose the music that we want to hear. But is our districts going to have their own type of music as well to give ambient that is typical to the district? How is the character of the district going to be represented, apart from visuals, obviously?
Okay, so this is a really cool question. Music is a way for us to draw a picture in players' imagination, in players' understanding of the story, of the missions, of the quests that player is doing. And music has been very important in The Witcher 3. It has been accompanying the players throughout the important quests. We always do a very special pieces of the music for the quests that player is playing. So to just make sure that the music in the quest is not really repeatable, is something that's specifically done for the given moment to make sure that we can touch the players. Of course, because of the amount of content that we have, it's not really possible because it would be incredible amount. But always the most important quests, most important elements have their custom music, while everything else comes from our library, as we would call. And this library of music is something created by our amazing composers, and they make sure that all the districts are depicted with a special way, I would say. Now, I cannot really say if that means that each of those districts are going to have one. I would say that the best way to explain that is the way we did in The Witcher, which is like the huge separate locations. They have their own separate themes and separate, I would say thought or a meaning or a trope that was behind it. And it has been repeating to make sure that the player feels the atmosphere, the special atmosphere of this place. So this is something that we are aiming to recreate in Cyberpunk, to have it very done in a very similar way. And our composers are fucking amazing, and I just love whatever Marcin Przybyłowicz or Piotr Adamczyk or our composer that I always have trouble to correctly spell his name, Paul, who has done the amazing.
Now you know how we feel.
Yeah, savage Polish people with their names, I know. But our composers are just making sure that it has the correct feel and so on. So I think it's going to be close to what you have said. But to say precisely what it is, it's still ongoing, right? So we're still, because there's still some time, and the soundtrack is still being created. And we have some insane amount of hours right now. I cannot disclose numbers, but they are really, really high right now. So I hope the players will be happy.
Then I have another question, because it's been mentioned many times the subject of factions. That I think we can apply this name to Cyberpunk. So we have the booster gangs, we have some that are more violent than others, then we have the even more violent. I'm guessing that we are also going to have vigilante booster gangs, but then we have mega corporations, but are we going to have also the mafia, the triads, how many factions are there? Are all the ones that are in the pen and paper game?
Oh, we have few specific factions in the game. There is from each representative group there is some kind of a group that is a faction that is representing them. Of course, I don't want to go into details and mention and list them out, because that basically spoils out exactly what player will find in the game. And as you do the main story, you are being led, and you meet different factions. Not all of them are being met in the main story. Some of them you meet only on side quests, and or on a different side activities that the player can do. And I think the primary focus we have put on the factions as booster gangs, and on the second side, corporations. So they play the major, I would say, roles in the story of Cyberpunk 2077, and the way they're depicted, how much, I would say, screen space they have, and so on. Because looking into the whole base material of Cyberpunk 2020, it was a lot. It was crazy amount of them. Some of them were extremely varied and so on. So we, of course, obviously had to decide and pick those that we are going to make, because it was just simply way too much, and for the player it would feel that they are way too undefined. It would feel that it's a bunch of everything, and every time there's somebody who's coming from some group that they don't get, and so on. So it's a way of making sure that those groups are distinct enough, I would say original enough, that they have their own places that you can visit. So I would say headquarters is too big of a word, but a place where they are squatting, maybe that's the good way to put it, so that when you go there, you can meet them, you can meet their leaders, various leaders from various groups, because they are very uncohesive groups, the same way how it is pretty much in the reality. And those are I would say corporations, a few of them, and gangs, also a few of them. In case of gangs, I can probably say it's plenty actually. Of them, those are the primary focus of the game.
Bolsos. It's my favorite booster gang.
Yes, no comment about it. But, yeah.
Six.
Are there going to be underground areas of the map? I know there's a lot of verticality, but does that extend to maybe underground subway systems and things like that?
Yes, the verticality means some kind of underground systems. Mm-hmm. It's not I can't say it's a very, very complex and dense system, but there is a fair deal of a map is actually underground when player goes there and visits, and there's actually various things depending of the mission. There are sometimes things for exploration, sometimes they're connected to, let's say, the subway system, sometimes they are connected to just purely exploration or a specific quest that players are doing. So this is It all depends, really. Like one thing that has been mentioned from our Gamescom demo, and that information has been public, that we have old maglev tunnels. So this is like a monorail train, sort of, that you're entering. It's a part where you meet the Voodoo Boys, and it's I would say their sort of area. Without spoiling more, but yeah, so there are like distinct, I would say, underground locations, but I don't think we can say that this is like a massive amount of places. I think it's significant and visible when you do that. When you go there, yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Just want to thank Takezo Shinobi for 20 pound donation. This is a question. I know you're tired. Just try to answer it as fast as you can. He asks, have you used only Cyberpunk 2020 in terms of lore, or for certain quests you took references from Blade Runner or other futuristic settings?
Oh, okay, that's a cool question. I mean, honestly, we have taken references for everything, for really everything that you can, from music, we have from anime, from the movies, clearly, and of course, pen and paper. Pen and paper 2020 is dated in places. So of course we had to update it quite a lot to just make sure it feels good. It actually speaks to our players who have the experience of of current world, sort of. So it's believable for them, so it's understandable for them. But of course, like in our inspirations, like Ghost in the Shell, both Blade Runner movies, a lot of anime, especially Akira. They played a great, actually, they played a great deal of influence. They had a great deal of influence on us, especially the visual part. So when playing Cyberpunk, you actually, I think, feel and see a lot. And what's really cool for me is that since we have announced Cyberpunk and we've been showing more and more materials, I think we see the resurgence of this genre a bit on the field of the culture, because for years now, I mean, I would say writers and also creators, just broadly speaking, creators of content, we're saying that the cyberpunk genre on the field of the culture, broadly looking, is pretty much dead. Like very little new things is created. And then since we introduced the game, there are also a few things that appeared, and let alone the Blade Runner or Ghost in the Shell, or the new information about Akira, all that, and just the Netflix series, right? So all that coming together, we can see that there's this resurgence of this I would say genre, and this is really really interesting for me. And there's plenty of analysis on YouTube why that is and what's going on and what it's connected to, and I really like it. I actually am looking forward to see the interpretation of our players and YouTubers and content creators, like what the game is about, and all that.
Thank you for that.
Nice.
Oh.
I have another question that has been asked several times in the chat, and this going back to this subject that is always discussed about the consequences of your actions, and we're thinking about the consequences when it comes to breaking the law. Obviously, this is Night City, breaking the law in front of someone. Are we going to really face consequences when you do something in front of the police or in front of a vigilante booster gang, or they're going just to look at you and forget?
So it all depends on the context, and this is something you mentioned, because it all depends really where the player is. What is the context of a scenario, of a situation that you are? If you are, of course, in a like booster gang's location and you start like looting shit all over the place, they definitely want to be happy about it. Of course, when you're doing like start killing people, in the plain light on the streets, or start doing weird shit in the places where, let's say corporate guards should react, they will. So it all really depends. If you're in the Badlands where you find like burning cars and like destroyed convoy of nomads, and so on, the places where nobody is pretty much protecting, then it's a different kind of story. So it really depends on the context. if it's clearly like if it's clearly like shown that that kind of action will be considered illegal, then some actions from authorities will be taken. And it all depends what kind of authorities those are, because sometimes it's just a gang reacting to you. Sometimes this is police. Sometimes those are corporate guards. Sometimes those are guards of a given, like, let's say, shop that you are. So it all depends on the context, on the place you are. Basically, Cyberpunk is a world where I would say power in terms of like authority is very spread. And in the political literature, it's called balkanization, right? So it means that the power gets spread and divided into smaller centers of power. That's why everybody has their own guards. Everybody has their own, like Militech has their own army, right? That became army of US at some point. And some very elegant shops, they have their own bodyguards, but police exists, and police is trying to make an order in some parts of the city. But other parts of the city, let's say Pacifica, there are voodoo boys, there are animals who are taking care of the order there, and they took it in their hands, and they consider lawful action something absolutely different than police officers, and so on. So this is how the cyberpunk world is. The power is not really centralized. It's spread between those different sources of interest, I would say.
How far does NPC react? I mean, if you are in the middle of the street and you start shooting, and this is Night City, everybody has a gun with them, are they going to shoot back? Are they going to defend themselves? Are there only specific NPCs that are going to react, or everybody is reacting here?
It depends of what kind of NPC that is. So if the person you have threatened is a person that logically thinking could have a gun and fight back, they will most likely fight back. There are scenarios when they won't, depending if player did, maybe they feel threatened anyway, and they won't try to fight us. But there are also scenarios when those are just citizens that do not have too much to do with the guns in general, and they will try to escape or run away, or they will simply think that you are too big of a threat and they will run away. So that is so they will react basically depending of who they are, depending of the, I would say, AI archetype basically that decides about it. What should I do at the given scenario? So those situations can be varied.
So just a quick follow-up question to that. Have you guys ensured, following along with, of course, mainstream systems and mechanics, that your grab the person and shoot them in the head button is the same button for chat, and it just kind of like accidentally flips back and forth when you're like close to an NPC trying to talk to them?
Oh dear Lord! I mean, of course we did. Like, no. I mean, of course, it's just like a primary ergonomic thing for me. No, they are absolutely on different buttons, and I don't think you ever mix it. So it's like in our game. In our game, when taking away somebody's life and having the non-lethal playthrough, like it's extremely important for us so that the players are like clear when they want to kill and then when not. So yeah, accidental kills of important NPCs shouldn't happen, I hope.
Thanks for entertaining my silly question there.
Another question. I have lots. I mean, once you're tired, you just tell me, yes, stop. But I can be asking questions for days.
She won't stop until you tell her absolutely no more. So,
I mean, for talking to you guys, I think we should slowly wrap it up because this material is long as hell right now, probably. But
okay, I have one very more important one. It's been in the news lately. And a lot of people are a little confused and a little worried, and I kind of see where the confusion started at. So, just to clarify, the area and the playable area that you'll see throughout the game is not smaller than The Witcher, right?
Oh God, sorry, my Windows tries to update. Sorry. Okay, persistent. This is a difficult question to answer, and the reason is because of the density of the content and because of the verticality. because the direct answer, I have no idea. And that's the direct answer. And we are unable to even count it right now. Like, what I know, it feels fucking absolutely massive. The problem is that when you have those mega buildings with so many floors, then you have buildings that are flat. Then you have the Badlands that are mostly flat. Then you have some underground locations. It's just like, what, like, do you count the area covered by water? Because you can swim. So do you count that as playable? I guess, because you can play there, right? So it's like so difficult to say for me, like blankly yes, no, for that. It feels very big. Like we have put a lot of work into make sure that there's plenty of area. But in terms of square meters, like purely looking at that, I cannot tell. And the reason is that we are still wrapping up the game. Like some buildings are getting more floors. Some are getting less floors when we are reworking things. So it's like, sometimes it's like I'm like, I really don't know. Like I am very, very confident in the fact that it's really fucking big. And thing is that we always think that we make too small of a game, and then it turns out that we misguided it a lot. It's half bigger. So
yeah, I think the question probably would have been better. Is probably better suited to somebody who's more on the technical aspect, because that's one of the things that anybody who's like doing lots and lots of map creation or working on the physics is like, they kind of have a running idea in their head, and so it doesn't always get translated out, I think, the best way. So, but no, that's good, because I think, again, I think this is a little overblown, but I think it's something.
As long as it feels big, why would you get caught up in the semantics of the particular square footage, right?
Yeah, I mean, what's important, guys, for us is the guys and girls and our audience. What's important for us is the fact that we try to pay the utmost attention to quality. Worth it, right? If it's just a shit ton of emptiness, it's not interesting, right? It's a filler. I would rather have a really great building with awesome interior and meaningful content there, rather than a bunch of square meters that are empty, right? And it's just it, right? Like, what we put the most attention at is the fact that if you have those square meters there of the map, of the buildings, of the interiors, of the underground locations, if it's there, of interesting things there. If it's dense enough, if it's interesting enough, that's the most important thing. Like the size of it is like a second thing. Naturally, with the quality, obviously, because we build big games, we build big stories, we really want to immerse the player, and we really want this game to be massive. And like, considering our production schedule and amount of like ninja juggling we had to do to make sure that we squeeze all the tasks into in the roadmap and so on, it feels insanely big. But the square meters is a super tricky question.
Arbitrary thing, yeah.
Okay.
Well, and again, is like, I don't think it's from what we had heard from very early on reporting on this, we had never been given like a square meterage. We'd always been given like a running calculation. So that is, of course, naturally something that has been constantly shifting and changing, and it doesn't always translate to what when we first talked about the concept. It came out as one thing, and then somebody immediately ran with it into a completely different direction. It's like, oh, not really what we meant, but yeah, that's good. That answers it. So,
yeah. All right. I think Pawel, you need to get some rest.
I just ran out of water.
Yeah.
We're sorry for the barrage of questions.
We do apologize, but we're very grateful that you're here with us, and that CD Projekt is so involved with the community, and this just you coming to the podcast shows how much the company actually cares for the community. So thank you again from all of us, and yeah.
And I wanted to thank you guys, like specifically, like guys and Matt Queen, like four of you, five of you, all of you, really, for the interest you have in the game. Because we in the studio and in my team, we watch the materials you're doing on the YouTube, and I'm not sure how clear it is for people like outside of the studio, but we like read, watch, and listen to a lot of the things that you're doing and you're saying. And yeah, and if you care about something and you talk about it, we definitely hear it. And that's
Nice.
like the first, like I think that's like first step, right? Like if it's something is important for you and you make it important, and you feel it's important when you talk about it, then when it's different from our original plan, we definitely think about it. You know what our community thinks, what our community wants, because we make it for the players, right? We want make the game we want, but we make it also for the people. So it's great when there's this feedback loop, you know, when communities talking back to us, and especially for the content creators, like the fact that you all of you are making the content and putting a lot of effort into making sure that it's in a clear, understandable, clean way. I really, really appreciate it. And yeah, and I'm looking forward for the new things you guys make.
Oh,
I don't know if you are reading the comments, but everybody's putting hearts and sending
All the
love
hearts.
away.
Thank you guys. No, I'm not reading comments, but I really, really appreciate it. Yeah.
thank you.
So
All right.
for
Yeah.
the just before we finish up for the giveaway, I think what we will do is we will have a tweet that will have this video that will come out afterwards. So if you are following us on Twitter, I think we'll do a tweet tomorrow. Between today and tomorrow, depending on where you are in the world, and if you guys are all following follow all of our channels, and if you guys bounce back on those channels with a like and a follow and a comment on the video that we post, we will put it into one of the machines that randomly picks a winner from that. So we will do that, and that's how we'll probably handle the giveaway. And of course, we want to address this too. The giveaway is from Talsorian. These are the guys who are making Cyberpunk Red. This is of course Mike Pondsmith's company. Big supporter of Mike Pondsmith. We love his content. We love his work. This is of course the foundation for what has been made with Cyberpunk 2077. This is the lore and the information that leads from 2020 into 2045, and then from 2045 we're going to be seeing some content there that's going to be dropping, that's going to give us some clues as to what's going on in 2077. So follow us on each of our Twitters, and we will post that link tomorrow. That way this will give everybody who has a chance to listen to the podcast will be able to hop on that and get their application in for that. It is for the digital version of the Cyberpunk Red game, the Jumpstart Kit. It's not the full one yet. They haven't released that one yet. It is the digital version, not the physical version. So if you want, follow us all and tweet at us, and we're going to be picking 3 winners from people who reply to the various tweets, and we'll have more information on that tomorrow. So thank you, Talsorian.
Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome.
All right. So this should be probably a wrap up. So thank you everyone for coming to the podcast. Thanks to the usual bunch, and thank you again, Pawel, for coming.
Thank you guys. It was amazing.
It was. We're looking forward to more podcasts, and of course, next podcast. Who is hosting that?
Triple S.
Yes.
Yeah. So next week, Cyberpunk 2077 Community Podcast on the Triple S League channel. Check it out. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.
Peace.
Goodbye, everybody.